It is Friday, early afternoon. Oops, Las Vegas. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can hold this thing steady. I'm taking a break. I'm up near the Sunrise Mountain range. You can't tell because I'm basically in the car. I'm staying in the car because YouTubers have started doing that. Well, they've been doing it a long time. It's a way you get a little bit of a moment of privacy. Hear that sound? I'm locking all the doors all around. And I'm well protected, so I'm not too worried. There's nobody nearby, but there is a little school over here, and sometimes it gets rowdy, as you can imagine. But anyway, the sun is firmly in Pisces right now, okay? We're in there a few degrees. We got the Pisces new moon is underway. The moon is already in Taurus. It's going to move along, and it'll hit Virgo before we know it, and we'll have the full moon. So you might have noticed that I've said a few things, or I've said a few things that where my language gets a bit fruity, and I'm not going to hold that back because when I was looking at the charts for the Pisces season, my feeling was that we're going to see a deluge of sewage coming out regarding the sickness of humankind. And especially at the very, very pinnacles, the very, very tops of the, let's say, societal structures. And because of the condition on my channel right now, it's very hard for me to actually use the names, the monikers, the three-letter IDs, all of that, because of the way the algorithm works on my channel now. So I'm just going to talk about it in a very kind of Piscean, nebulous, loose kind of manner. But the folks that I'm describing are people who are hollow. These are people who deliberately choose to abdicate love in favor of things like power, money, and control. And it's a very seductive pathway. And of course, you can go very high, very, very high in this world if you deliberately and consistently choose to vacate love in your life and instead opt for the simulation of love. And so I'm thinking of the Pisces vibes and the Pisces energy where it's very easy to get lost in the world of illusion and delusion. And so that's partly why the Pisces Neptune vibe, as beautiful as it can also be associated with some of the sickest and most tragic aspects of human experience. And so, you know, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so, and now I'm telling you so again. I was thinking I should be all sort of like regimented and orderly, like, Neil McCoy Ward or Mark Moss. They're brilliant at the way they do their content. I love a few other channels as well, the way they do things, but I'm not them and they're not me. Those folks, the folks that I tend to watch, the ones that I enjoy, tend to be very much about the politics and global finance. And they have to censor themselves pretty severely in order to keep their channels going, and they kind of talk in code and sign languages so that the algorithm doesn't get them destroyed. Anyway, before my TikTok got trashed and banned, and before my latest hello winner chicken dinner. So before my TikTok got banned, I was really indulging in just full on like rant, blah, 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 blah. Oh, did you hear about the WHO or the CDC or, whatever's going on in Eastern Europe with the big war and Uncle Joe and the Mr. Z, okay? And billions of dollars going over there. Okay, so these are themes that are well well established, and they're like leaking all over the media. Excuse my throat. Excuse me, including the mainstream media, because it's impossible to ignore what's happening. Maybe that's just telling me to shut up. I don't know. I do have this. So things, it's to me, it's becoming very, it's becoming very obvious that the deluge of sewage that I anticipated it's now in full flow. And I went to check up like I do with all my sources. And sometimes I contrast with the mainstream media in America so I can get a reference point so I don't sound like I'm completely one-sided. And so when I cruise through my sources, I see I started there's just so many like sickening, disturbing stories that, and no matter what the subject is, big explosions here, millions of chickens being killed over there, factories being bombed by airplanes, more and more scary stories coming out to the surface regarding the famous bug number 19. Dr. Anthony now confessing openly that he made a mistake and there were a lot of problems. And wait a minute, I've got just a short list here. I mean, I don't know where there were just so many. I just thought, well, there's the story about Dr. Anthony, now openly admitting his lies and failures. There's an incredible story from it's on the Epoch Times, and you have to follow a link to get the real meat of the story because I can't talk about it here. But it's essentially about this very, very big, very, very dangerous department it's initialed with D.O.D. I believe that's the Department of Defense. I hope I don't get shut down by this stuff. And the theme, in essence, was that I don't know if I can say this, but the DOD, along with their buddies, DOD is the ultimate perpetrator here. And Big Pharma is actually the weapons delivery system. Okay? So that explains a lot. And if you want to go digging in, you can find out all that stuff. And so when I was going through reading and watching, I kept thinking, whoa, okay, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. The other one is another one, initial W.H.O. It's a big organization that covers health all over the world. And Uncle Joe, very sneaky, very private, using his executive privilege and the Emergency Act that was activated a while ago, very conveniently, under the cover of the big bug number 19. So he's circumventing everything to do with our Constitution and the law, and he has just unlawfully drafted and signed an agreement with this organization that controls health all over the world, such that effectively America is abdicating its oversight over the health of the United States and giving it all over to this other organization, which has nothing to do with we the people. And they can tell us what to do. And if we allow them, we let them, when we kind of go, oh, okay, then we are effectively complicit in our own demise. Do you see how this all works? It's all predictive programming. It's all psycho brainwash stuff that is conditioning very, very, very carefully, very, very gently, extremely effectively for we the people, all the people of America, not just we the people, not just patriots, but all people, to the point of acceptance, such that we become servants, we become slaves, we become subjects to the tyrannical leaders. So, of course, as I spoke many times before, this is a repeat of the 1776 era. Now, things didn't just happen click in 1776. There were decades and decades of war leading up to the point of 1776, where the so-called founding fathers went and said, enough is enough. That is it. And that was the actual demarcation point. But the actual Pluto energy that was prevalent regarding all this stuff was operating for decades before the 4th of July 1776 and for decades after 4th of July 1776. And we are at that pivotal point right now. For the last 20, perhaps even 40 years, it's become very obvious that the United States is heavily, heavily corrupted, heavily diseased, just like a massive metastatic cancerous tumor. And it's so bad that you cannot avoid seeing it now. A lot of cancer exists in human beings without detection or awareness, sometimes until it's too late. That's what's happening right now. And the perpetrators, if you want to call them the cancer cells, are hoping and praying that our immune system, which includes this, our body, our mind, our heart, and our soul, is effectively asleep or lazy or deactivated or incapable of fighting back. And that is their strategy. It's called softening up the enemy. Like in war, what really effective soldiers and warriors do is they don't just go ranting around, going ballistic and going, hey, I don't like you. You need to shut up. They plan the war well in advance. And when they get to the point where they actually want to go hot, they build up to that point by what they call softening up the enemy. They do that with asymmetric warfare, psychological warfare, psyops, starvation, cutting off supplies, blowing up bridges, blowing up trains, doing all the things that effectively cripple the enemy and make it much harder for the enemy to resist or fight back from the perpetrator. So in case if you are psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, or willfully or deliberately blind to what is going on right now, then you need to be aware that we are at war. And we are at the stage where the United States is the last remaining bastion of freedom. Okay? And we are now at the point where our enemies are softening the target. We are the target. We are their enemy. Okay? We have to know our enemy. I know our enemy. I know their strategies. I understand what they do and how they do it. It sounds very, very complicated because it involves complete and utter mind control, body, mind, heart, and soul. Financial, number one. Number two, resources, okay? Water, air, timber, food, copper, lithium, gold, silver, rivers, oceans, arable land, all these amazing things that we in America, a lot of us just take for granted because we have so much. And like Alaska Prepper says, if we actually knew what it was like, excuse me, in other parts of the world, we would be shocked to realize that the price of food in America is cheap. which has allowed America to become fat and lazy. You can see it. It's very obvious everywhere you go in America. And I don't want to judge people or point fingers, because a lot of them are in this, a lot of Americans condition where they've already lost. They've already been defeated, but they don't know it. Anyway, this agreement that Uncle Joe just signed very recently with this organization that wants to control the health of the world, effectively what it does, it opens the door, and Joe keeps his foot jammed in the door so that this organization can facilitate policies, provisions, and illegal but effectively operational tools, strategies, tactics that are presented to we the people as a way to combat the spread of disease. In translation, what does that mean? Vax Pass. I hope I said that in such a way where the algorithm doesn't click. And that could be on your phone, that could be like a little chip in your hand or whatever. And the idea is that they want to impose this on every living human being, and probably even animals all over the planet. And that's not for your benefit or my benefit. It's for their benefit so that they can effectively control we the people. If you saw and watched the content that I saw very early this morning, I've been up since about 6 a.m. trying to study and learn this stuff. I had to go through 2 layers to get to the point where I could watch this content safely. And it's this wonderful, I think she's a Swedish doctor, and she was revealing some of the evidence that she pulled out from Big Pharma and American, through the Freedom of Information Act. And you get to the point where when you say the word conspiracy theory, it's no longer a conspiracy and it's no longer a theory. All the most scary, despicable, ugly, demonic things that those so-called theorists feared have now been fully validated, and it's all documented on paper from the original perpetrators. There was a lot of material. I'm not going to go into it here. And at the end of the presentation, you have to wonder, why are these demonic people who are at the very, very, very top of society? Well, from our perspective, they look like they're at the top. They're typically extremely wealthy, extremely powerful, and they have a lot of control and influence over our lives all across the world. Not everybody at that level is evil, but some of them are, because they have made willful decisions to abdicate love and choose earthly pleasures, earthly satisfaction, like power, money, and control. And they get that through the exploitation and abuse of others. I don't know if you've ever witnessed serious abuse or lived through it yourself, but a lot of it is to do with power and the determination to own power over another human being. Now, take that to the extreme where a single individual or a single group of a small number of individuals want power over thousands or hundreds or millions of people, or in terms of places like China, 1.5 billion. Okay? Out of 8 billion people on the planet now. When I started my channel, 5 years ago, it was about 7 billion. Do you see how we breed? We're still living through an expansion of population, despite countries depopulating. But anyway, human beings they are the way they are. And so it's no surprise that certain beings exercise their like genetic biological urge to be, I guess you could call it, a pack leader or an alpha character in their sphere, in their world, in their sphere of influence. And they will do anything to get there, including murder, rape, pillage, assault, mind control, deception, betrayal, lies, bribery, blackmail, murder, I said that already, more corruption. Basically, every iteration of evil you can imagine. So we are seeing that. All of the most sick, perverse, evil stuff, and it's all over the world. I get my sources from all over the world. I don't just watch ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, NPR, Reuters, Associated Press. That's just one extremely narrow and highly distorted perspective. There's a lot more going on out there. See, this is my list, okay? I only just started. I'm sorry. You've probably heard of the latest scandalous three-letter, what are they called? What's it? Anagrams or something. I don't know what it's called. It's when you take a bunch of words and you squash it into three letters for ease of definition. So everyone's now heard of the ESG, Environmental Social Governance, which of course is it's all bedded into that stuff from the New World Order, the World Economic Forum, all these self-appointed elites whose goal is to create global tyranny. Of course, they're packaging it as we are going to save you. Communitarianism, or the world is one, or for example with George Soros, the Open Society Foundation. It sounds so good. It's just a front for evil. Anyway, ESG is spreading like cancer across the world. Corporations can't get funding or banking unless they comply with ESG. Corporations that would never normally even dare consider ESG are signing on and complying with ESG. Otherwise, they go out of business. And it's not just the owners and the shareholders. It's the employees. It's everything. Okay? Now, there's another layer inside and parallel to that. It's DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are DEI offices and bodies all over the United States now, especially in all the major cities and all the universities and all the major corporations. They all have an ESG department and a DEI department. The DEI is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion department. So like, let's say I had a huge corporation, airlines or distribution, like with, trucks and Amazon or, something like that, or Boeing or a big banking operation. I cannot operate what I would consider a healthy business unless I include ESG or DEI in my decision making. And did you hear the story about that pilot a couple of days ago? This pilot was a very sweet, loving character, wonderful man by all description. And he always wanted to be a pilot. And he had a bit of skills. Anyway, a big company, something like Amazon, hired him to fly some of their big shipping jets. Enormous jets, the same size as passenger jets. So the guy flies it. He takes off. And within a few minutes, the whole plane nosedives into the ground, and the co-pilot witnessed everything, couldn't control it because the guy flying it was supposed to be a fully qualified pilot. Turns out the guy flying it didn't have a clue. Not a clue. The guy was hired through the DEI and the ESG mandates. In other words, his competence as a pilot was the least important aspect of whether he'd be hired or not. And now, People die because of these kind of decision makings and these kind of absurd, sick, perverse laws and mandates. It, it, it staggers me. But again, I correlate this with the astrology. It's the sickness and the perversion. If you think of the sun, okay, as a massive flashlight, it's lighting up the Pisces Neptune vibes right now. The beautiful thing is that I feel very blessed to appreciate so-called positive aspects of Pisces and Neptune. But I'm also simultaneously and in parallel aware of the shadow side. And the shadow side, the flip side, because it's like energy, positive, negative, volt, like electricity. You can't have one without the other. And the sad side is very, very sick. And that's the stuff that I've been, ranting about for years. Because we need to be aware of it. You can't survive without being aware of your enemy, your sickness, your diseases. We have a very powerful immune system built inside of us. It spends all its time and energy looking for problems, and when it finds a problem, it kills it. Of course, that's on the biological level, but it's no different to what's happening with human beings. It's the same thing. There are some people, their day job is to look for problems and then figure out how to solve it. Otherwise, human beings would be dead. We wouldn't exist. We have incredible immune systems, but there are people who figured out that they can get more power, money, and control by defeating and subverting the natural, powerful immune systems that we have. I'm only alive today because I believe somehow I'm divinely protected and I seem to have an amazingly powerful immune system. Otherwise, I would have been dead multiple times over from all the SHIT that I had to live through. Anyway, all of that ESG, DEI stuff is being presented to the world through the forum that is all over the world, and it's economic. The initials are WEF, and the website is weforum.org. Those are the crazies, people, okay? Those are all the crazies at the very, very, very top who believe it is their mission, their birthright, their duty to control the world. It's literally like a mania. It's like a disease. And it's always happening. It's happened in Roman times. It happened 6,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. It's happening today. There are a handful of very, very easily recognizable faces that you could put all in the same box, and they are all tyrants, murderers, and thugs, totalitarian, communist tyrants. Okay? All those faces are very recognizable in today's media. Now, you have to remember that here in the good old USA, there is a very, very dark, shadowy side to our stuff. You might want to watch the video from Alaska Prepper from yesterday when he read this amazing story essay from one of his viewers. And it described in about 40 minutes, 20 minutes, it condensed everything that you could call the shadow side of the United States. And I don't have any reason to doubt the essay or doubt Alaska Prepper because I was already aware of all of that stuff anyway. But it was very, I guess, comforting to see the whole story condensed into one document that was very readable and very understandable and very succinct, okay? You don't have to go to a four-year college to figure it out. You can just go to a 20-minute video on YouTube. Thank you, Alaska Prepper, and your Alaska Prepper viewer. But that ESG, DEI stuff is all presented to the world and implemented into human population through the WEF and their gang under the guise of climate issues. Because under the climate issues, you can just put everything. You can put the famous bug. You can shut companies and corporations down. You can destroy whole economies by destroying their farms. You can get someone like Uncle George, last name initial S, or with his Open Society thingamy club foundation, who can afford billions of dollars to pay these very shadowy characters to do the business of softening up the target. Personally, okay, I can't prove any of it, but there are enough people like me and probably like you where you're starting to connect dots. It's impossible to avoid what we're seeing unless you live inside a little cage with no media at all. All the explosions, all the fires, all the destruction of everything that's good about the United States, the deliberate destruction of the railways, the deliberate destruction of the oil and gas infrastructure, the deliberate destruction of all the electrical power systems, the deliberate destruction of the waterways, the health of the waterways, the deliberate destruction of the psychological and distribution networks that allow all this to work together, the deliberate destruction of the, let's say, the rule of law, okay, at the federal level with the all the multiple letter agencies, especially at the very top with the Department of Justice, all the way through FBI, CIA, blah 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 blah, all down to the states, all 50 states with their own local department, the courts and everything, the higher courts and the supreme courts of each state and the lower courts. It's all being softened. The whole idea is to soften the target. The enemy, my enemy, has been going at it for years, and they've become very effective to the point where America is literally walking around like a human being who has like extreme metastatic cancer, but has not yet been noticed or diagnosed. And this human being is walking around thinking like, oh, okay, everything's fine. I got food. I got my soda. I got, I still got a credit card. I'm up to my neck in debt. I'm up to my neck in other kind of sickness. But as long as I can continue to buy and eat cheap food and go from A to B to do my so-called day job so I can be a really effective debt cow on the debt farm that is called the United States, then everything's fine. And everything, they're telling me I'm fine until you start to go, oh. It just so happens that where I live, my dear friend has her dear friends who are showing signs of serious, what I would call dis-ease and sickness as a result of everything that I've been talking about here. But they're not aware because the sickness manifests in so many different ways. It isn't just metastatic cancer. It's anything and everything that equates lack of health: body, mind, heart, and soul. All of those four things. Are you healthy in your body, your mind, your heart, and your soul? There's a lot of sick, sad, tragic people out there. Anyway, these are methods, these are systems to soften us up, undermine the enemy. We are the enemy. The United States, if I had my little maps here, you would understand. I'd show you the map. The United States is enemy number one. We the people, 340 million of us, we are the only people on earth who have our Constitution. Notably, the First and the Second Amendment. The First Amendment is about freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to think what you think and believe what you believe and feel what you feel, and the ability to convey that and say that uh, freely and openly. And whether if somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to listen to you. If somebody likes it, they can listen to you. If somebody doesn't believe you, they don't have to believe you. But you still have the freedom. And of course, you have to be respectful. You have to understand that in the Constitution, It requires a tremendously high standard of self-sovereignty. You have to be true to universal law, not just subjective law or subjective truth. Universal law, universal truth. And then you have to abide by that. You have to live in universal truth. You have to live in universal law, and you have to be a shining, living example. You have to live by example. And sadly, for a lot of people, it's easy to talk about it, but it's much, much harder to do. It's much easier to degrade your, let's say, codes of conduct and live within a much more decrepit, lower frequency conduct, because then you don't have to evolve. You don't have to grow. You can just become what some people call a useless eater. And you can just graze away until you die, and then replicate, duplicate, like a lot of people do, I think, with unconscious behavior. Remember that inside our amygdala, which is like the hormone control, along with our thyroids and so on, a lot of our human behavior is autonomic. Sort of sounds like automatic, right? But it is autonomic behavior. Just like an ant or a butterfly or a puma or a, let's see, I don't know, an elephant or a daffodil or a pine tree, our inherent design is to go forth and multiply, to grow and prosper and reproduce. It's a scorpionic theme: birth, procreation, death, repeat, repeat, repeat. And that's what we have on Earth today, with all the plants and the animals and biologic life. Anyway, that's what human beings are doing. And you can't, it's very hard to stop them. It's very hard to legislate human behavior like that. And the reason we have 8 billion plus people on the planet today is because we can. It's a biological prerogative, priority, to go forth and multiply. Because that's like how, like in the old days, that's how you would protect and defend yourself. Your offspring, your progeny, your bloodline would be your wealth. Okay, it wouldn't be how much, how cool is your car or anything like that. Because as you grow, yes, thank you, winner, winner, legacy. Okay, as you grow and evolve, you become aware that, oh, I was born, I'm living, and soon, and then eventually I'm going to die. And people often live through these different chapters, like your glory days. For a lot of people, their glory days are in their 20s and 30s. And then people start degenerating and degrading when they get into the 40s, 50s, 60s. And then a lot of human beings weren't really designed to live beyond the first Saturn cycle. You know, that was it, biologically. Then we figured out more ways to survive, and we could get up to the second Saturn cycle. So that's almost like 60 years. And that was staggering. And now here we are, we're getting to the next point in evolution, where human beings are starting to live for 3 Saturn cycles. That's 30, 60, 90 years. It's really happening. I just want to finish off that note there about ESG and DE. There's this thing I learned about. It's called DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And of course, that's very close to some of the other agencies that are strongly associated with things called war. Whether you're prosecuting a war or defending against war, it's still war, okay? So that's heavily involved in this thing I mentioned when I first started ranting about the DOD. Remember, the DOD is the actual perpetrator. Big Pharma is simply the weapons delivery system. That's it. Very simple. I kept going for a while, and I just kept thinking, wait, there's so much more. There's so much more. All the stuff that's happening in Europe. There's a lot of decay and ESG, DEI stuff going on in Europe. The banking system, the world economic financial systems are imploding, which is a natural, inevitable thing when you have fake money. It's happened every single time that a ruling class decides to degrade their so-called money and turn it into a currency, and then that currency becomes abused to the point where it can't be abused anymore. And you end up with something that we call inflation, which is ultimately a form of dis-ease, and it creates higher and higher prices for the same thing. So effectively, all around the world right now, the whole global financial system pivots around the US dollar. And there are about 7.5 billion people around the world who are sick of it. In America, there's 340 million of us or something, so we're still at an advantage. We are the people closest to the printing press. So even at the lowest, most humble levels of American society, we are still at certain advantages above everyone else outside of the United States as a citizen. If you're in Western Europe, you live at the mercy of the United States dollar. Same thing with China, India, Southeast Asia, Africa, the whole of Central and South America. They all live at the mercy of the US dollar. The US hegemony, which basically means body, mind, heart, and soul control of the rest of the world by the USA propagating its so-called mission to save the world, to be the world police. But there's a very dark shadow side to that. You will know about that. Anyway, so it's inevitable. That's what is happening today happens today. So here we are. We're living it out. It's actually happening. We're actually witnessing 1776 revisited, where there's enough people right now who are basically going to say, that's enough, enough is enough, enough. We're going to do something about it. We, the people, are going to reclaim our sovereignty, our individuality, and live in a healthy community. Not communism, not communitarianism, but an actual community where we, the people, are here for we, the people. And we're not interested in any kind of, let's see, tyrannical, totalitarian, evil, self-appointed leadership to take away that sovereignty. No, 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 no. It's not allowed. It's not going to happen. The problem is that one of the problems is that we, the people, like peace. We like family. We like harmony. We like love. We love our animals. We love our people. We love each other. We are loving. We are loved. That's bad news for the elites. So here we are today, USA, 24th of February. The Pisces vibe, very, very strong. And like I mentioned earlier, we're just basically seeing a deluge of sewage. It's all lit up by the sun. We're seeing the sick shadow side of what's happening with our species. Now, of course, there's lots of beautiful things happening out there too, but I'm operating like a little fragment of a global immune system where I am spotting. I am like a scout. I'm out there looking around like, what's going on? There's something really, really bad out here. I need to get ahead of this because I don't want to be a victim, because if I'm a victim, then my whole world implodes and collapses, okay? Think of me as a white blood cell. How about that? Anyway, I got kind of warm and fuzzy when I realized how big this is. And I'm going to say something now. I don't know if you can read my writing here, but there are these folks called patriots, and they're in the United States, and a lot of them are retired things like military, first responders, police, people who are typically sworn to uphold the Constitution, especially the First and Second Amendment, so that we can keep our beautiful thing going. And they get to a point, well, I'm not officially in service anymore, but I'm really good at who I am and what I do, and so I am going to continue in my mission. And so they create these things, okay? where they give themselves permission to protect and defend themselves according to our Constitution. And in so doing, they act as, what do they call them? The cells inside the immune system go and attack the enemy. Okay? Do you see where I'm getting at here? It's a very small number of people, but they are typically what are called patriotic types. And they respect the First and Second Amendment, and they prepare themselves accordingly. And I didn't know this, but there's a lot of them now coalescing on the southern border of the United States with Mexico, just north of the border, and they are now starting to move south of the border. Interesting, huh? Because they're basically, they're very law-abiding, because that's basically what they've sworn to, but they swore to a higher law than the dictates and the mandates from Uncle Joe and his gang. A bunch of criminals. And so these folks who belong to these groups that I've talked about, they are typically regarded as domestic, like they live inside America, and they like to impose terror. So you string those words together and you get a common catchphrase. Okay? They're not. They're actually very, very powerful parts of the immune system of we the people. And they are now taking it upon themselves to do what they have to do, to get done what has to get done, because we the people are starting to feel too much pain, too much sickness, too much disease, that is really not our fault, except that we allowed it to happen because we like peace and harmony. We don't really want to go to war. We're not warmongers. We are only acting in defense here, okay? But we are dealing with a vicious, ruthless enemy. And it's not just the folks south of the border. It's everyone that's coming through there. There are a lot of people coming through there who are enemies of we the people. They're doing everything they can to take advantage of the southern border. At the same time that Uncle Joe is doing everything he can to keep the southern border open. He's just like he's like a slimy guy who's got his foot jammed in the door of the elevator to keep the elevator door open so that people can squeeze through and get in to fulfill his agenda, his evil agenda. And so that's what's going on right now. And it made me feel so fuzzy and warm, like, oh my God, something actually is happening, okay? It's wonderful to have speeches. It's great to have, these patriot rallies all over the country where people go, yeah, we're going to reclaim and everything. But that's very different from taking up your Second Amendment right and actually holding the enemies accountable at the end of a long metal freedom stick. Okay? So that's what's happening south of the border. And I wouldn't be surprised if these groups start to amplify and take care of business to the point where it becomes a face-off. Okay? I've talked to Love Triber and Path Traveler about this quite a few times, but essentially the way I operate, I kind of distill everything down through a decision-making tree, a decision-making process. So I think like, well, what is the end game here? Okay, well, I'm not going to pinpoint an exact date, but I've got some pretty good ideas. But essentially, we're looking at the essence of war. That's what we're looking at right now, and how it manifests. The subject of World War III is now being loosely used all over the global media, whether it's mainstream America or a lot of the sources where I go. It's just common terminology, because what else can you call it? So it's happening. And there's going to be multiple different energy fields that coalesce around this so-called dynamic of war. But in essence, it comes down to two polarities. The reason I'm saying two, even though it's multipolar in so many ways, but everything will coalesce and condense around two mutually exclusive, mutually opposing energy fields. Guess what they are? I'll use one word for each. You probably know what they are already, but I'm going to say it. One is called freedom. The other one is called tyranny. Okay? Tyranny wants total control. The only way they can do that is to destroy freedom. Freedom wants to be free. The only way they can do that is to defend themselves against the tyrants. Inevitably, that will lead to war. What's that going to look like? Well, a lot of it is already happening, especially in the global financial markets. Okay? It is World War III in the global financial markets, in case you're not aware. But it's starting to get spicy and it's warming up, especially in Eastern Europe, all over parts of Africa, parts of the Middle East. And it's spreading and it will continue to spread. But there is little like United States in its own bubble. And we just remember, we have something that no one else has. And it's extremely, extremely valuable. And you better wake up right now to understand how valuable that is, because by abdicating or ignoring what's happening doesn't mean the problem's going to go away. All that's happening is the enemy will look at you and go, you're just a piece of fresh meat. Okay? So at some point, you, the person, we, the people, have to make a decision. What side are you on? Freedom or tyranny? If you do not deliberately choose freedom and everything that goes with it, things like being within your sovereign self, abiding by universal law, universal truth, rule of law, as opposed to rule of leader, rule of another person, which equals tyranny. You have to make a conscious choice. Are you going to choose freedom? Because if you do not choose freedom, you're effectively allowing tyranny to take you and own you. Okay? That's how the immune system works. The tyrants, the disease, the candida, the cancer, the different bug number 19s, they will completely eat up the entity that is either enjoying freedom or is not ready or willing or able to claim their freedom, or who's not really ready to fight to protect and defend their freedom against the tyrant. So either way, you, the individual, we the people have to become conscious, and you have to make a choice. Are you in? Are you out? The people over here, the tyrants, they've already made their choice. They're going to do anything and everything they can to take everything that we have as we the people. The United States is enemy number one because we have something that no one else has. Western Europe is already heavily compromised. The whole of Central and South America, heavily compromised. The whole of the Middle East, the whole of Southeast Asia, heavily compromised. The tyrannical bodies, CHINA, IRAN, NORTH, KOREA, and a bunch of others, they are coalescing, okay? They are coalescing into a tyrannical monster that is a single entity. And they are preparing themselves to take down us, we the people. Now, a lot of folks, what they call Western, like, Western Europe, Canada, North America, United States, Central, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Germany, places that are sort of considered the West. They're all targets, okay? But the ultimate target, the bullseye target for the enemy is us here in America. We the people. We are the bullseye. Out of all the people I just described in that list, we are one of the smallest groups. Like Germany has what, 80 million people or something? We have 4 times that. Germany is this big. America is this big. Okay, so you can see where we're going at here. In America, we have a lot to lose. We have so much to lose if you don't wake up and be prepared to protect your money, protect your privacy, protect yourself, protect your loved ones, protect your health, okay? Protect your mind, educate yourself, find a way to associate yourself and affiliate yourself with good people, people who understand what we're talking about here, and get with the program. Make deliberate, conscious choices, okay? Because if you don't make those decisions yourself consciously, those decisions will effectively be made for you at the subconscious level, and then it'll be too late. You will end up being dead. You will end up being a victim. You will end up living in a virtual or actual prison, okay? A prison of tyranny, okay? Just like what they have in CHINA. I don't want that, okay? So I'm literally doing anything, whatever I can, to stay in my zone. Path Traveler would say, stay in your lane. Do whatever you can to optimize yourself. Finances, obviously, get out of debt. Food, find a way to get as prepared and as self-sufficient as possible for as long as possible. Defense, do what you got to do. All right. Anyway, I kind of covered the list that I wanted to cover here today. I hope it makes sense the way I'm trying to connect it with the astrology. Okay, the energy is going to shift, and we'll have more, hopefully more talks one day. I hope they keep this video up. I don't know if they will. If it gets taken down, it'll happen in pretty short order. So I hope the people who get to see this video, who are, let's say, destined to see this video, actually get to see it. And if you don't get to see it, I'm sorry. There's a lot of this I can't control. If I was willing to record this and make these in different ways, I could load it up onto different platforms, like as a form of security. But a lot of times I can't do it the way I like to operate. So I'm just winging it. I'm taking my luck here. Anyway, bless you all. Have a super day. The moon is in Taurus. Enjoy it for what it is and make the most of it. Take care. Thank you for hanging out with me for all this time. I'm going to sign out now. I'm not sure I want to stop streaming. Yes, stopping the stream.